Let's continue moving through our template. So we've brought in our assets. Let's take a look at that. We've got, so far, if we look over here in our Scene Explorer window, let's expand out here. We've brought in a house, we've brought in 2 characters, and we have a camera. So that's what's coming in from the USD assets on disk. And also you'll notice in the Katana scene graph, there is a root world geo, and this is for the hair, right? And that's because the way this asset has been provided is that the hair is not living in a USD world, right? So it's at some point, this data has to be merged into a standard Katana scene graph. So as you're moving forward through your template, I'm going to skim past this import standards because I did mention it in the last chapter. This, again, would be where you would bring in standard settings for your sequence based on something that you've published out in your facility. But let's move down here, right? So you've got your USD to Katana assets node here. And what is this? This is a USD to Katana node. And so what you would do in here is you'd say, I want to move data from USD into the Katana scene graph. And this is the location you're going to drop it into. And then prim paths, this just represents these 3 paths that come in from USD. So you just add another location if you had another one, and each one of these just middle click drags into here. Let's view our scene graph from down here. You'll see once you do that, these will get crossed out, and now they're going to show up down here. And so this would be a standard Katana scene graph workflow. So you'd bring in your USD assets, convert it into a native Katana scene graph workflow, and then you would work from there. Now, if you were going to go over here, if I view over here, you'll see that, again, we're back to where we were before with everything living under the USD scene graph location. And there are some advantages to doing this. I'm not going to get into that too much. I'm going to leave that up to you. However you would like to set up your project. I'm just going to illustrate that there are ways that you can do essentially the same things. So the next step you would do would be to maybe create some collections. And these are all stacks. And if you want to make a stack, that's just a group stack, right? So if you tab, make a group stack. If you look in this node, you'll see this is a group stack for collection create. And how do you make a group stack for that? Like if you make a blank group stack, you'll see there's nothing here, right? So what you would do here is create a collection create node. So then you would just shift middle click drag it onto this little square. Once you do that, now this is a group stack for collection create. And so this is just a standard collection create. You would drop locations, add statements and whatnot. I won't get into making any of those. So this is a collection create stack. You could make anything that's useful for your sequence. Same way, we've got a transform stack. These are just transform 3D nodes. And transform, not transform edit, but transform 3D. And so I made another group stack the same way. And each one of these is just moving things around in your scene. And so this sofa transform, this came actually with, I think this was in the old template, so I copied that over, just moving the sofa to a certain spot, translating it here. And then I did some papers. You can see each one of these, just select a path and then translate it as needed. And then prune stack, if you needed to get rid of something, pretty straightforward. Here's a list of cell statements of things to get rid of, a little bit of an optimization if you wanted to hide some things. And then an Arnold object settings stack. So Arnold object settings, I'm not actually going to set any of these, but this is an Arnold object settings node. And this is normally where you would affect geometry with attributes that are going to feed into Arnold renderer specifically. And each renderer, of course, is going to have its own thing, you know, PR man object statements or whatever. It'd be the same kind of an idea. And then this would be something where you could say, you know, if I need to set ray flags, like setting something to matte or changing the camera visibility or something like that. And again, this area here is for the entire sequence, right? We're going to do shot specific stuff down here, and then we're going to do pass specific stuff down here, but we'll get there later. So now we've got, if we needed to set anything up, we could do that in there. And then there's one more thing I want to show you here. This is something that I have to say thanks to Ruth for, because she set this up for me. I'll get into this later in the tutorial when we talk about crypto mats. For now, I'm going to just mention it really quick. These are Arnold user data statements, so Arnold user data nodes, and then this is just setting up crypto assets for each one of our different objects in the scene. So this is a very nice thing that she set up for me with cell statements and whatnot. This lets you render crypto mats for assets and have it be a more useful mat once you get into compositing. Now let's look over here to our equivalent USD nodes. So if you look at our USD collection stack, again, there is a USD collection node, and you would use it to create your USD collections, and then transform, edit, active set. So instead of pruning, you're going to set a USD active set. Whatever is listed here is going to, if you turn off active, basically you're pruning it. All right, let's step through. We're going to talk about cameras. So here I've got another USD to Katana node, and right here, so if we viewed right above that, you'll see we still had our camera living up here, and we don't have any camera in our scene graph. Once you move down to this, you'll see now we've crossed out our camera and translated that into our scene graph location. After that, I've created a local cameras. This is a camera create group merge node. Now the group merge node is just like the group stack node, except this is designed for nodes that are creating something and don't have an input, right? So if you see these have an input and an output, whereas this one only has an output. And this is the camera create node. So this is a standard Katana camera create. You'd specify your scene graph location. You're going to make a perspective camera. And once you've moved it around, its translations and rotations will show up here. Then we're going to merge that together. Now, in a similar way over here, we don't need to convert our camera since it's still in USD. We're just going to make local USD cameras. And so here's another group stack, but there is a USD camera where you can specify and create your own cameras. And this is the same functionality as your camera create node. We'll move down to materials. So once we're talking about materials, so material stack node, you can add materials here and then just add a shader to, any Arnold surface. Once you make an Arnold surface, you could say, I want this to be, a standard surface or something like that. And then you're going to get parameters. Now, the thing to note is that these are not texturable. These are just primitive materials. If you use the local materials, you can't actually add any texture maps. So this is useful if you want to do basic things like make a gray ball, a chrome sphere, maybe a fog or something like that. Now, if you need to do anything more complicated, you want to make a local network material. So that's what this is. This is a network material create node. So you can see here it creates one for you. You can call that whatever you like. And hit this plus if you want to add any additional ones. Now to get into here, you would actually click on the node, hit Control Enter to jump inside. When you do that, you're not going to have anything here. So you need to right click and create an Arnold shading node. Once you do that, let's activate that. We need to apply a node type to it. So let's choose something like a standard surface. You can just put that out to your Arnold standard surface noodle here, change your parameters and do whatever you need to. And then again, if you need any kind of texture maps, you can make something else here. I'm not going to get too much into that, but you get the idea. So you could do more complex materials if you wanted to create those. Let's go back out. Once we've merged all of our materials together, we need to then assign them. So this is a material assign stack, again, another group stack, and with a material assign node. So you just assign whatever object you want. And actually, I've made this root materials default. This is coming from our local materials. This is just to catch anything that doesn't have a material assigned to it. So this is an 18% gray base color with no specular. And anything that is not assigned a material for whatever reason, sometimes they might have pipe checks or something where you put like bright pink material or something. So when you do a render, you could say, oh, hey, that thing is missing a shader. So then you can actually go ahead and debug that. So once we've got our materials assigned, next I'm going to add another group stack here. And this is just to actually edit some of the materials. But essentially what you're going to do is create a material edit, load in a material from your scene graph. If you get a message like this, you would just click this. And then if you wanted to, you would just dive into the node, Control Enter, and you can see each one of these is a separate node here. So you can go in, and you'll see if you're editing that material, you could go ahead and change something, if you want a different specular roughness or change subsurface materials like I did here, you could go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump back over here to the material overrides for USD as well. So what I'm doing here is just the same local materials that I'm doing here. And then I'm using another node to actually convert it back to USD. So since this is located in the scene graph, so if I look at that, you're going to see materials. And then if I click on this, you'll see that it is now transferring it back up to USD. This is just a Katana to USD node. And the same goes for our network materials. I'm just dumping those back up here. Then I would merge those together into the rest of the scene. And then there is a group stack here as well for a USD material assign node. And then it just works the same way as the standard workflow. I did not do a material edit stack yet. It gets a little bit more complicated moving things back and forth. If you had a USD material coming in and you wanted to change it, I would recommend you probably want to go USD to Katana, do that work, and then Katana back to USD. And then you have to make sure that you assign it. All right, and back to lighting here. So sequence lighting, I mentioned you're gonna have a Gaffer 3 sequence for sequence lighting here. If you go over to the USD, there is actually a USD light node. And so I've made a group stack here. Currently the workflow would be you make a USD light node for each light that you wanna create. And that's, there's some actions here. You can edit existing ones as well and move them around and whatnot. I will mention that coming very soon, there is a planned super tool coming for Katana to match or some similar functionality to a Gaffer 3 node, except for USD lights. So I'm told to tell you that that is coming soon. Okay, so next I'm going to mention breaking this out into individual shots. And so these are just some backdrops I've created. And then if you're doing individual shot lighting, I've created a Gaffer 3 node here. And so again, from here, I'm actually going to continue with the workflow in the standard scene graph rather than the USD workflow. There are ways that you could continue using USD. Eventually, though, it has to get converted over to the Katana scene graph. I believe at render time, it's going to happen regardless. So for now, let's talk about just using a Gaffer 3. What you want to do is you can see that, like if you just make a Gaffer 3 and you hook that up right here, if you click on it, you're not going to see any lights in here. And that's because it's not inheriting the lights coming in. So you could go up to this little wheel here and just show incoming scene. And so what happens is any lights that are coming in from your sequence, whether or not you're importing them from your standards or whether they're just something that you set up in this sequence-wide Gaffer, anything coming through is going to be inherited once you've checked this show incoming scene. Now, if you wanted to, say, change the location of something, notice that I don't have any access to any of these attributes. And that's because you have to right click and adopt for editing. Once you've done that, now you're going to have full access. So say, for example, this quad light that I've set up, maybe you want to set that to 45 degrees for just shot 10. You could do something like that. Just undo that for now. Now, this is something that I'm going to get to a little bit later, but this is a custom node that I decided to create. I think for another chapter, we'll talk about that. I'll move on here. So then we're going to have a variable switch. This is the same kind of variable switch we used before, the shot variable name with the different shots. So each one of these streams comes in. And now some render settings. This is a Katana render settings node. This is just specifying the camera. So that's here in our location here. And then making sure you pick a resolution, setting a renderer. I don't have any other renderers loaded, but Arnold will be the standard renderer for this. And then there's not too much else in here that you would have to set. If you're changing motion blur, shutter open, shutter close, you could do something in that. After that, we're gonna have our Arnold global settings. So this is a standard Arnold global settings node. This will inherit anything coming in with your standards, if you had them up here, or you can just explicitly state what kind of sampling you want to use. And again, we'll get into this kind of thing later. Now, we'll talk about passes in the next section.